Two teenage boys were kicked out of car dealership. Next day, billionaire dad's two Rolls-Royce arrives. They were just two teens in hoodies, humiliated and kicked out of a Rolls-Royce dealership. What happened next? Their secret billionaire father showed up and bought them two Phantoms. But the cars aren't the jaw-dropping part, wait, until you uncover the shocking secret behind why he stayed hidden for 16 years. Subscribe, like, and listen to the full story now. In a small, meticulously clean apartment on the south side of Chicago, twin brothers Malik and Marcus huddled over their shared desk, the glow of a single lamp illuminating their focused faces. At 16, they shared more than just their birthday. They shared an identical passion that burned brighter than the often dreary realities surrounding them. Cars. Not just any cars, but the rolling sculptures, the paragons of automotive excellence, particularly the majestic presence of a Rolls-Royce. Their bedroom walls weren't plastered with pop stars or athletes, but with carefully cut-out magazine pictures of phantoms, ghosts, and wraiths. On the desk, nestled between school books, sat a collection of detailed model cars they'd painstakingly assembled, saved up for with earnings from bagging groceries, mowing lawns, and shoveling snow. They knew the engine specs of a V12 by heart, debated the merits of different bespoke leather finishes, and could spend hours watching online videos dissecting the engineering marvels hidden beneath the polished exteriors. Marcus, the more pragmatic twin, was carefully applying a tiny decal to a 1/18 scale model of a silver ghost. Malik, ever the dreamer, sketched furiously in a worn notebook, designing his own modifications, imagining improvements to perfection. "See," Malik said, holding up his drawing, "if they just angled the rear spoiler slightly more aggressively, it would improve downforce without sacrificing the classic lines." Marcus squinted. "Maybe." But Mr. Royce himself said, "Strive for perfection in everything you do. Messing with the lines is risky." Their shared obsession was a refuge, a gleaming escape from the everyday struggles. Their mother, Clara Jackson, worked tirelessly as a cleaner at a downtown office building, her shifts often starting before dawn and ending late at night. She was their rock, a woman whose quiet strength and unwavering love filled their small home, even if money was always tight. She knew about their car dreams, encouraging their passion while gently grounding them in reality. She never spoke of their father, only that he wasn't part of their lives, leaving a void the boys unconsciously filled with horsepower and chrome fantasies. For months, Malik and Marcus had been pooling their meager savings. Not for a car that was an impossible dream, but for an experience. They wanted to see a Rolls-Royce Phantom in person. There was a dealership downtown, Prestige Motors, a place they'd only ever dare to walk past, peering through the gleaming windows like children outside a candy store. They'd saved just over $20 enough for bus fare downtown and maybe a shared slice of pizza afterward. Today was the day. "You sure about this, Malik?" Marcus asked, polishing the roof of his model ghost with his t-shirt sleeve. "It's fancy." Malik zipped up his slightly worn hoodie, his eyes shining with anticipation. "Come on, Marcus. We're just looking. We saved up. We just want to see it. Maybe ask a question. How often does a Phantom come through Chicago? We gotta go." Clara had already left for her early shift. They left a note on the fridge, grabbed their carefully saved bills, and headed out, their hearts pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. They wore their standard teenage uniform hoodies, jeans, slightly scuffed sneakers, oblivious to how incongruous they might look stepping into a world built on projecting wealth and status. Today, they weren't just two kids from the South Side. They were pilgrims heading towards their automotive mecca. The journey downtown on the rumbling CTA bus felt like traveling between worlds. The familiar sights of their neighborhood, the corner stores, the local parks, the brick apartment buildings gradually gave way to the gleaming steel and glass towers of the Loop. Prestige Motors was situated on a prestigious street, flanked by designer boutiques and upscale restaurants. Its expansive floor-to-ceiling windows showcased automotive jewels resting on polished marble floors under soft, expensive lighting. Taking a deep breath, Malik pushed open the heavy glass door, a soft chime announcing their arrival. Marcus followed closely, his eyes wide as they stepped inside. The air conditioning hummed quietly, carrying the faint, expensive scent of leather and polish. It was hushed, reverent like a museum. And there it was, center stage, a Rolls-Royce Phantom, immense, majestic, its deep midnight blue paint absorbing the light. It was even more breathtaking up close than in pictures. They stood frozen for a moment, simply absorbing the sight. They didn't dare approach it yet, just drinking it in from the entrance. Malik nudged Marcus, a silent expression of shared awe passing between them. "Can I help you?" "Boys." The voice cut through the quiet reverence like gravel on glass. They turned. Leaning against a sleek reception desk was a salesman, probably in his late 40s or early 50s. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, a smug expression fixed on his face. His name tag read Dave Miller. He hadn't moved towards them. His posture radiated disdain as his eyes swept over their hoodies and sneakers, lingering dismissively on their faces. Malik, recovering first, offered a tentative smile. Yes, sir. We were just hoping to look at the Phantom. We're huge fans." Dave scoffed, a small, unpleasant sound. "Fans? This isn't a playground. It's a high-end automobile dealership." He pushed himself off the desk, but still made no move to welcome them further in. "Are your parents here? Are you looking to purchase?" The questions were rhetorical, dripping with sarcasm. "No, sir," Marcus said quietly, feeling his cheeks flush. We admire the craftsmanship. We save up bus fare just to come see one." He gestured vaguely towards a Phantom. "Could we maybe just ask one question about it?" Dave's smirk widened into a sneer. "Ask a question? Let me ask you a question. Do you have any idea how much this car costs?" You couldn't afford the valve stem caps on those tires, let alone the tires themselves. He took a step towards them now, his demeanor shifting from dismissive to actively hostile. "This is no place for kids like you loitering around. You're making the real customers uncomfortable." He glanced pointedly around the otherwise empty showroom floor. "We're not loitering," Malik protested, stung by the injustice. "We just wanted to look for 5 minutes. We love these cars." "I don't care what you love," Dave snapped, his voice rising slightly. "I care about selling $500,000 vehicles to people who can afford them. Now get out, both of you, before I have to call security and have you removed for trespassing." He physically gestured towards the door, stepping forward menacingly. Humiliation washed over the twins, hot and stinging. Their excitement curdled into shame. They saw another employee, younger, arranging brochures at a nearby desk, glance over with a flicker of discomfort, but quickly look away, unwilling to intervene. There were no other customers. The accusation felt baseless, driven purely by their appearance, by Dave's prejudiced assumption that they didn't belong. Without another word, Malik turned, grabbing Marcus's arm. They pushed back through the heavy glass door, the soft chime mocking their exit, and found themselves back on the bustling sidewalk, the Phantom gleaming tantalizingly behind the glass barrier. The $20 felt heavy and useless in Malik's pocket. The city noise seemed loud and harsh after the showroom's quiet exclusivity. They didn't speak, just started walking towards the bus stop, the gleam of their dream car instantly tarnished by the ugliness of their reception. The pilgrimage had ended before it even truly began. The bus ride back to the south side was conducted in heavy silence. The brothers slumped in their seats, the earlier excitement replaced by a dull ache of embarrassment and anger. The injustice stung more than the insult itself. They hadn't done anything wrong except exist in a space where they were deemed unworthy. When they reached their apartment, the familiar scent of lemon polish and the comforting sight of home did little to lift their spirits. Clara was back from her first job, preparing a simple dinner in their small kitchen. She took one look at their crestfallen faces and knew immediately that something was wrong. "What happened, babies?" she asked gently, wiping her hands on her apron and pulling out chairs at the small kitchen table. "You were so excited this morning." Hesitantly at first, then with growing indignation, Malik recounted the story of the gleaming showroom, their initial awe, Dave's sneering dismissal, the accusation of loitering, being told they couldn't even afford the tires, the threat of security. Marcus added details, his voice tight with remembered humiliation. Clara listened patiently, her expression hardening as they spoke. She reached across the table, taking one of each of their hands in hers. Her own hands were rough from years of hard work, but her grip was firm and loving. "Oh, Malik, Marcus," she sighed, her heart aching for them. "I am so sorry that man treated you that way. There are people in this world, small-minded people, who judge others by what they have or what they think they have instead of who they are." She squeezed their hands. "Don't you ever let someone like that make you feel small. Your worth isn't measured by the clothes you wear or the money in your pocket. It's measured by your character, your kindness, your dreams. You are good, smart, wonderful young men, and you deserve respect, no matter where you go." She hugged them tightly, offering the unconditional acceptance the world outside often denied them. "Don't let him steal your dream," she whispered fiercely. "You keep loving those cars. You keep working hard. You are worthy of beautiful things." Her words were a balm, but the sting remained. They ate dinner quietly, the earlier glow of their shared passion dimmed for the moment. Miles away, in a minimalist, glass-walled office atop one of Chicago's tallest skyscrapers, Nathaniel Jackson stared grimly at the screen of his tablet. The office was stark, modern, reflecting the cutting-edge world of MJ Innovations, the multi-billion-dollar tech firm he had built from the ground up. But the document displayed wasn't a market analysis or a product blueprint. It was a discreetly worded report from a private investigator. For years, Nathaniel had lived with the hollow ache of regret. As a young man, deeply in love with Clara but terrified of his own wealthy, controlling family's disapproval and the daunting prospect of fatherhood, he had made a choice he came to bitterly lament. He walked away before his twin sons were born. He had provided some anonymous financial support over the years, channeled through layers of lawyers, ensuring Clara wouldn't struggle too much, but he hadn't dared to make contact, fearing rejection, fearing he'd disrupt the life she had built without him. Recently, however, the gnawing need to know his sons, to somehow make amends for his cowardice, had become unbearable. He hired a reputable investigator, not to intrude, but simply to find them, to learn about their lives, their interests, their well-being from a respectful distance. He needed to know if they were okay before he could even contemplate trying to bridge the chasm of 16 years. The reports had painted a picture of two bright, hard-working boys, devoted to their loving mother, passionate about cars. Nathaniel felt a pang of connection. He'd been a car fanatic himself as a teenager. Then came today's update, the visit to Prestige Motors, the salesman's deplorable behavior, the twins' public humiliation. Nathaniel read the account, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the tablet. A cold fury, mixed with profound guilt, washed over him. His sons, who he had failed to protect, had been treated like dirt simply for dreaming, for looking like they didn't belong in a place built on excluding people. The salesman's sneering words couldn't afford the valve stem caps echoed in his mind, fueling a protective rage he hadn't felt in years. He thought of Clara, her quiet dignity, her strength in raising them alone after he had abandoned her. He thought of the boys, saving their pocket money just to glimpse a car, only to be chased away like vermin. His absence had left them vulnerable, and the world's casual cruelty had found them. His decision, forming over months of lonely contemplation, solidified in that moment. Watching from the shadows wasn't enough. Sending anonymous support wasn't enough. It was time to step out of the past, to confront the present. He wouldn't just rectify the injustice his sons had faced. He would use this ugly incident as the catalyst to finally try and reclaim his place in their lives, however difficult, however undeserved he felt it might be. He picked up his secure phone, his expression like thunderclouds gathering before a storm. His first call wasn't to the dealership, not yet. It was to his most trusted executive assistant. The time for quiet observation was over. Tomorrow, Prestige Motors was going to have a visitor. The following morning dawned crisp and clear over Chicago. At Prestige Motors, Dave Miller arrived whistling, adjusting his tie in the reflection of a showroom window. He'd already forgotten the two scruffy kids from the day before. They were insignificant, just another minor annoyance in a job that required him to constantly filter out the time wasters from the genuine high rollers. He smoothed his lapels, ready to charm and close deals. He was polishing an already immaculate countertop when the first car arrived. Not just any car, but a brand new Rolls-Royce Phantom, extended wheelbase, gleaming obsidian black, pulling silently to a halt directly in front of the dealership's main entrance. It was driven by a uniformed chauffeur who remained impassively behind the wheel. Dave felt a flicker of excitement, perhaps a potential whale arriving early. Before he could even formulate his smoothest opening line, a second Rolls-Royce Phantom, identical to the first, pulled up alongside it. Another chauffeur, equally stoic. Two Phantoms, side by side, engines purring almost inaudibly, commanding the attention of everyone on the street. Passers-by stopped. Phones came out. Murmurs rippled through the air. This wasn't just a customer arriving. This was a statement. Dave rushed towards the entrance, pasting on his most welcoming, obsequious smile. The rear door of the first Phantom opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit, his presence radiating an aura of quiet, intense power. Dave didn't recognize him immediately, but he knew instantly this was someone significant. This was the kind of client he lived for. "Welcome. Welcome to Prestige Motors, sir." Dave gushed, practically bowing. "Dave Miller, at your service. Are you interested in the magnificent Phantom today?" The man ignored Dave's outstretched hand, his eyes, sharp and cold, scanning the showroom before landing on Dave with unnerving intensity. "I might be," the man said, his voice low and resonant. "But first, I'm expecting my sons." Just then, a sleek black Cadillac Escalade pulled up behind the Rolls-Royces. A different driver opened the rear door, and out stepped Malik and Marcus. Gone were yesterday's hoodies and sneakers. They were now dressed in smart, well-fitting suits that looked brand new, their faces a mixture of bewilderment, nervousness, and a dawning sense of disbelief. They looked hesitantly towards the tall man, who gave them a brief, almost imperceptible nod. Dave stared, his jaw slackening. He recognized them immediately, despite the suits. The kids from yesterday. Here, with this man, and two Phantoms. A cold dread began to seep into his stomach, chilling him far more effectively than the dealership's air conditioning. The tall man addressed the twins, his voice softening slightly, though still carrying undeniable authority. "Malik, Marcus, come inside." He strode into the dealership, the twins following in his wake like satellites caught in a powerful gravitational pull. Dave stumbled backward, his mind racing, trying desperately to make sense of the situation. Other employees had emerged from the back offices, drawn by the commotion outside and the arrival of the phantoms. They watched in stunned silence as the imposing stranger led the two boys further into the showroom, stopping directly in front of Dave. The man's gaze was piercing. "You work here," he stated, not questioned. "You were here yesterday afternoon." Dave swallowed hard, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. "Why, yes, sir. I'm Dave Miller, senior sales consultant." "Dave Miller," the man repeated, the name sounding like an indictment. He gestured towards the twins, who stood slightly behind him, looking uncomfortable but resolute. "These two young men came into your dealership yesterday. They were interested in the Phantom. Do you remember them?" Dave's face paled dramatically. He looked from a man's cold eyes to the boys' now accusing faces, then back again. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. I think, maybe I saw them briefly," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "It was busy." "It wasn't busy," the man cut him off, his voice dropping dangerously low. "And you didn't just see them briefly. You mocked them. You insulted them. You told them they couldn't afford the tires. You threatened them with security and threw them out. You took a step closer, invading Dave's personal space. You threw my sons out of your dealership. My sons." The words hung in the air, heavy and explosive. Dave felt his knees weaken. The blood drained from his face, leaving him looking gray and sick. The impossible reality crashed down on him. The billionaire tech mogul Nathaniel Jackson, founder of MJ Innovations, one of the wealthiest, most influential figures in Chicago, if not the country, was standing in front of him, flanked by the two teenagers Dave had dismissed as worthless street kids just 24 hours earlier. The thunder hadn't just rolled in. It had struck him directly. The showroom, already hushed, seemed to hold its breath. The other employees stood frozen, witnessing Dave Miller's world implode. Malik and Marcus shifted uncomfortably and used to being the center of such intense adult drama, yet a spark of vindication flickered in their eyes. Nathaniel Jackson kept his piercing gaze locked on the trembling salesman. "You seem to be having trouble recalling the specifics, Mr. Miller," Nathaniel said, his voice deceptively soft but laced with steel. "Perhaps my sons can refresh your memory." He glanced back at Malik. "Malik, what exactly did Mr. Miller say to you yesterday?" Malik hesitated, looking at his brother, then at Nathaniel, then finally at Dave, who seemed to be shrinking inside his expensive suit. He asked if our parents were here," Malik recounted, his voice gaining strength. "He said we couldn't afford the valve stem caps, that this was no place for kids like us, that we should get out before he called security. Because we were just looking at the Phantom," Marcus added quietly but firmly. Nathaniel nodded slowly, turning back to Dave. "Does that sound familiar, Mr. Miller? Judging people based on their appearance? Assuming the worst? Humiliating children who harbor a simple, harmless passion for automotive design?" "Mr. Jackson, sir, I am so terribly sorry," Dave stammered, wringing his hands. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "It was a misunderstanding. A terrible mistake. I didn't know they were your sons. If I had known..." "If you had known," Nathaniel interrupted sharply, "you would have pretended to respect them. You would have put on a false smile and measured them for their wallets instead of their character. That's the problem, isn't it? Your respect is conditional. It depends on perceived wealth, not inherent human dignity. He paused, letting the silence stretch, amplifying Dave's discomfort. You owe me no apology, Mr. Miller. My feelings are irrelevant here. You owe an apology to Malik and Marcus Jackson, to the two young men you treated like garbage. Dave turned pleading eyes towards the twins. Boys, I'm truly sorry. I was rude, unprofessional. I misjudged you. Please forgive me. His apology sounded desperate, motivated by fear rather than genuine remorse. Malik looked at Marcus. They hadn't expected this, hadn't wanted this level of confrontation. But standing there, validated by the imposing presence beside them, they found a quiet strength. Malik spoke, his voice clear. We forgive you, but Mom always taught us. Treat everyone with respect. You shouldn't judge people before you know them. Nathaniel watched the exchange, a complex mix of pride and pain in his expression. He then turned his attention back to the business at hand, his demeanor shifting to that of the decisive CEO. Now, he announced, his voice resonating through the showroom, about the reason I came here today. He gestured towards the two Phantoms waiting outside. I came to purchase two Rolls-Royce Phantoms. One for Malik, one for Marcus. A collective gasp went through the assembled employees. Dave looked like he might faint. Buying one Phantom was a major event. Buying two, on the spot, for two 16-year-olds? It was unheard of. But Nathaniel continued, his eyes narrowing slightly. I find myself questioning whether Prestige Motors, under its current management and sales culture, is truly deserving of my business or anyone's business that values basic decency. He pulled out his phone. Ignoring Dave completely, he addressed one of the other stunned employees, a younger man who had witnessed the previous day's incident with visible discomfort. You, what's your name? Titamus, sir, the young man stammered. Thomas, Nathaniel said. Give me the owner of this dealership. Now. Thomas scrambled to comply. Within moments, Nathaniel was speaking, his voice calm, but carrying immense weight. Arthur? Nathaniel Jackson here. Yes, fine. Listen, I'm currently at your Prestige Motors showroom. No, not looking. Arthur, dealing with a significant issue regarding unprofessional and discriminatory conduct by one of your senior salesmen, Dave Miller, towards my sons. Yes, my sons. Threw them out yesterday. Today, I came to buy them each a Phantom, but frankly, the culture Miller represents gives me serious pause. Nathaniel listened for a moment, then continued. I expect Mr. Miller to be removed from customer-facing roles immediately pending a full investigation. Furthermore, I expect a thorough review of your staff, training regarding customer interaction and bias awareness. Yes, I'm serious, Arthur. This reflects poorly on your entire brand. Good. I'll proceed with the purchase through young Thomas here, provided I have your assurance these issues will be addressed decisively. Thank you, Arthur. He ended the call and looked at Dave, whose face was ashen. Mr. Miller, I believe your presence is no longer required on the sales floor. Perhaps you should wait in the back. Humiliated beyond words, Dave practically scurried away towards the offices. Nathaniel then turned to the stunned but composed Thomas. Thomas, you witnessed what happened yesterday. Thomas nodded mutely. And you seemed uncomfortable with Mr. Miller's behavior? Thomas nodded again, more firmly this time. Good, Nathaniel said. You'll be handling the sale of two Phantoms today. Standard wheelbase, I think. Let's discuss specifications. He turned to his sons. Malik, Marcus, you heard the man. Pick your colors. The revelation that he was their father, that he was buying them these unbelievable cars, that he had wielded his immense power to defend their dignity, washed over the twins in waves of shock, confusion, and a strange, thrilling sense of justice. The dream car was suddenly terrifyingly real. But tangled up with that dream was the sudden, overwhelming reality of the father they had never known, who had just crashed back into their lives with the force of two Rolls-Royce Phantoms. The air crackled with unresolved tension long after Nathaniel Jackson, his sons, and the two Phantoms, driven by Thomas and another dealership employee for the moment, pending paperwork, had left Prestige Motors. The immediate drama was over, but the real, far more complex story was just beginning. Nathaniel knew he couldn't simply drop back into their lives with grand gestures and expect 16 years of absence to vanish. The confrontation at the dealership was partly about defending his sons, partly about assuaging his own guilt, but mostly it was an explosive, perhaps clumsy, attempt to bridge an enormous gap. Now came the hard part. Facing Clara, he arranged to meet them back at their apartment building, dismissing the chauffeurs and drivers. He stood awkwardly on the sidewalk as Malik and Marcus got out of the Phantoms, the sheer luxury of the vehicles looking surreal against the backdrop of their modest building. Neighbors peered curiously from windows. Can we go up?" Malik asked tentatively, glancing between the cars and their apartment entrance. Nathaniel nodded, bracing himself. "Lead the way." The climb up the familiar stairs felt different today, charged with unspoken questions. When Malik opened the apartment door, Clara was standing just inside, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of fierce protectiveness, bewilderment, and a deep, simmering anger Nathaniel recognized instantly. She had clearly been contacted, perhaps by his assistant, perhaps by the boys themselves in a flurry of confused texts. "Clara," Nathaniel began, his voice losing some of its earlier command, replaced by a vulnerability she hadn't heard since they were young. "Nathaniel," she replied, her voice tight. 16 years. Not a word, not a call directly from you. And now you show up with those." She gestured vaguely towards the street where the Phantoms were parked, visible through the window. "And put my sons through that drama downtown?" Malik and Marcus stood uncertainly in the doorway, caught between the mother who had always been there and the father who had suddenly materialized like a force of nature. "Mom, he stood up for us," Marcus offered quietly. "That salesman yesterday. I know what happened yesterday, baby." Clara cut him off gently but firmly, her eyes still fixed on Nathaniel. "And I know what happened today. What I don't know is why." "Why now, Nathaniel? After all this time?" Nathaniel took a deep breath. He stepped fully into the small living room, a space filled with warmth and family photos he wasn't part of. He felt like an intruder. "Clara, there's no excuse for my absence. None. I was young, terrified. My family." He trailed off, knowing it sounded weak. "They pressured me, threatened disinheritance. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing by staying away, by providing anonymous support so they wouldn't interfere directly. It was cowardly. It was wrong. I have regretted it every single day for 16 years." He looked at his sons, his heart aching. "I started looking for you, properly, a few months ago. Not to interfere, just to know, to see if you were all right. When I learned what happened at that dealership yesterday, the injustice of it, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I couldn't stand by while my sons were treated that way. So you buy them Rolls-Royces?" Clara challenged, her voice trembling slightly. "You think you can fix 16 years of absence with expensive cars?" "No," Nathaniel said quickly, shaking his head. "No, the cars." That was partly anger, partly wanting them to feel valued after being so disrespected. Maybe it was misguided, but it wasn't meant to replace anything. It was meant to be a start, a way to say, "I see you. I'm here now, if you'll let me." He looked directly at Malik and Marcus. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be your father. Not just financially, but present, if you're willing to even consider it." And Clara, He turned back to her, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so profoundly sorry for failing you, for failing them." The room was thick with unspoken history, with years of hurt, anger, and longing. Clara didn't relent immediately. She asked hard questions, tears welling in her eyes as she spoke of the struggles, the lonely nights, the questions from the boys she couldn't answer. Malik and Marcus listened, absorbing the raw emotion, their own feelings, a confusing mix of resentment towards a stranger who was their father, curiosity about his life, and the undeniable pull of having him there, defending them, claiming them. There were no easy resolutions that afternoon. No medical forgiveness. But there was a crack in the wall of silence. Nathaniel didn't push. He listened. He apologized again and again, without making excuses. He acknowledged their pain, their anger. By the time he left, hours later, twilight painting the Chicago sky, nothing was truly fixed. But a fragile truce had been reached. They agreed to talk more, to meet again, slowly. Nathaniel left his personal number, not his assistant's. He walked away from the apartment building, leaving the two gleaming phantoms parked at the curb like extravagant, uncertain peace offerings. He knew rebuilding trust, building a relationship, would be a journey far longer and more complex than any drive in a luxury car. It would require more than wealth. It would require humility, patience, and consistent presence, things he was determined, finally, to give. The weeks and months that followed were a period of careful adjustment, like learning to navigate a familiar landscape that had suddenly, drastically changed. There were awkward dinners where silence stretched, punctuated by hesitant questions. There were weekend outings not always extravagant, sometimes just walks in the park or visits to museums where Nathaniel learned about his son's lives beyond their shared love of cars, their friends, their struggles at school, their hopes for the future. Malik, initially more reserved, slowly opened up about his interest in design, showing Nathaniel his sketches, not just of cars, but of buildings and gadgets. Marcus, practical and observant, grilled Nathaniel about the tech world, his sharp questions revealing an analytical mind. Nathaniel, in turn, shared aspects of his life, not just the successes of MJ innovations, but the pressures, the mistakes, the loneliness that often accompanied his wealth. He was careful not to overwhelm them, conscious of Clara's watchful eye, her fierce love for her sons tempering her own cautious willingness to let Nathaniel try. The Rolls-Royces were officially delivered, registered, and insured. Seeing them parked regularly outside their apartment building never quite lost its surreal quality, but the initial shock wore off. Nathaniel insisted on driving lessons for the twins in more practical vehicles first, emphasizing responsibility alongside privilege. Sometimes, Malik or Marcus would take Clara for a slow, careful drive around neighborhood in one of the Phantoms, the luxurious interior a stark contrast to their usual surroundings, yet the shared laughter inside was genuine. The cars became less symbols of sudden wealth and more symbols of their father's complicated, imperfect attempt to reconnect. True to his word, Nathaniel addressed the incident at Prestige Motors beyond just Dave Miller's dismissal, which had become permanent after the dealership's investigation. He worked with the owner to implement mandatory, comprehensive bias awareness and customer service training for all staff, using the incident as a case study in what not to do. He also followed through on another idea sparked by his son's experience. He established the Twin Dreams Initiative through his foundation. It wasn't just about cars. It was about access and opportunity for young people from underserved Chicago communities who showed passion and talent in any field, particularly STEM and design. The initiative provided scholarships, mentorship opportunities, funding for tools or equipment, from programming laptops to art supplies, welding gear, or even bicycles for reliable transportation to jobs or classes. Malik and Marcus, while not supervisors, became the initiative's first youth ambassadors, sharing their story, carefully omitting the more painful family details, and encouraging other kids to pursue their passions despite obstacles. Seeing the tangible impact the fund had on their peers gave them a sense of purpose beyond their own windfall. One crisp autumn afternoon, Nathaniel attended a small event showcasing projects funded by the Twin Dreams Initiative. He watched Malik confidently explain a 3D printed prototype he designed, saw Marcus helping younger kids troubleshoot a coding problem. Clara stood nearby, a soft, proud smile on her face as she watched her sons interact with Nathaniel, a comfortable ease replacing the earlier tension. Later, as Nathaniel was leaving, Marcus caught up to him. "Hey, Dad," he said, still getting used to the word. "That salesman, Dave. What happened to him?" Nathaniel paused. He was let go by Prestige. Last I heard, finding work in high-end sales has been difficult for him. He looked at Marcus. "Why do you ask?" Marcus shrugged. "Just wondering. It was about him, learning." Like Malik told him. Nathaniel nodded slowly, understanding dawning. His sons weren't defined by resentment. They possessed a generosity of spirit, nurtured by their mother, that he was still learning from. "You're right, Marcus," he said quietly. "It's always about learning." He drove away from the community center not in a Rolls-Royce, but in a modest sedan he often used for less conspicuous travel. He realized the journey he was on wasn't about making grand gestures anymore. It was about showing up consistently. It was about mending the walls of the past, brick by painful brick, and building bridges towards a shared future. He hadn't just found his sons. He was beginning, slowly, to find his way back to being a father, learning from them that true value lay not in the gleam of chrome, but in the quiet strength of character and the enduring power of family, however fractured and imperfect it might be.